The introduction of the Dangote Refinery with a projected capacity of 650,000 barrels per day is expected to significantly alleviate Nigeria's reliance on imported refined products and position the country as a regional hub for refined petroleum products. However, the successful integration of the Dangote Refinery into Nigeria's energy ecosystem is not without its challenges. According to experts, issues such as pipeline vandalism, theft, and the need for a robust infrastructure, seamless distribution of refined products will require careful planning and coordination, of course, between government and stakeholders in the sector. We also have regulatory issues and other issues. But let's get talking now. I'm being joined to start the week on Business Nigeria, Professor Emeritus in Petroleum Economics, Emmanuel Gohar Foundation in Abuja, Professor Wumi Iledare. Thank you so much, Prof. Good afternoon. It's good to have you on the program.
Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me. I hope you are doing well today.
Yes, very well. Prof, I think I want to start this conversation this way. First is that now that we expect Dangote Refinery to come on stream in a matter of weeks, according to Mr. Dangote himself at the last interview, we are now having issues with the IOCs and also the allegation of manipulating the price of crude. How does this come to you? Make us understand why we're having all of these challenges close to when we expect the refinery to come on board.
Well, again, thank you for the invitation. I am delighted to be here, and I represent myself and not my organization. The Emmanuel Gohar Foundation is a policy advocacy group, and we try to educate the public, not on the basis of sentiment, but on the basis of facts and pragmatic approach to solving problems. Let me start with facts. One, Dangote Refinery is located on a free trade zone. Let us come to terms with that. So there's a different regulatory framework that is going to govern its operations. And I think it's a Free Zone Act regulation of 2003. So whatever discussions we are going to be having with respect to what goes on, let us try not to be sentimental, but to look at the regulations. Dangote Refinery is on a free trade zones, and there are guiding principles to operate on a free trade zone. The second fact is the production curtailment and domestic crude oil obligation, domestic crude supply obligations. And the Petroleum Commission has guidelines on how this is supposed to proceed in terms of volume that is allocated, in terms of pricing of the crude that is required, and in terms of pricing between whoever is allocated the crude and whoever is paying for it. It is something that has to do with buyer-seller agreement. There's also an important fact that must be remembered, and that is the role of the Petroleum Authority to determine the volume of crude that is required for supply to domestic refinery operators. So I do not want us to allow ourselves to go outside this important framework. And having said that, the expectations of the society from the fact that they produce crude oil and the fact that Dangote is refining petroleum product in Nigeria, and automatically the price of petroleum products must go down, is misplaced. It is not supported with fact, it is not supported with regulation, and it's not supported with operations. Now, is it possible for the price to come down? There's also that possibility. And the final fact that I want us to debate on is the competition between two markets. You have international market with a completely different demand schedule, and the domestic market with a completely different demand schedule, which actually is dictated by the level of income driving those markets. So this would be my opening remark as we continue on the conversation.
Prof, let me now follow up with this question. Like, how much time, if you can hear me clearly, Prof, do we have to wait for the downstream to adjust to this, to knowing that a functional refinery is coming to play in Nigeria? How much time do we need to make to integrate things and put things together without having these challenges?
Correctly, because the volume is down.
Okay, can you hear me now, Prof?
Yes, I can hear you very well now.
I'm saying, how much time do we need to wait for the downstream to integrate and get to understand that there is a functional refinery coming on stream anytime soon?
Again, you do not have any control over that. It is the Dangote Refinery Group that we accelerate that. The only thing the government can do is to incentivize them in one way or the other. It is not a right, because all of these are determined by the market fundamentals. And the market fundamentals normally have no respect for sentiments or political expediency. What I just want to try to do here is to set the stage. I think there's need for conversation, and I'm really happy that the authority quickly intervened by bringing every participant in the market together to resolve some of the allegations. I mean, I've tried to ask a question with respect to the allegation of dirty fuel, with respect to the pricing of the crude by the International Oil Company. I look at it and characterize it with a mantra that says, where's the beef? Where everybody's advancing their position. I think Dangote is aware that it's on a free trade zone, and there are rules and regulations that he has to abide with. And I also know that the Petroleum Commission and the Petroleum Authority are aware of certain aspects of the Dangote refinery that they have no control over. So there has to be conversation. And that's why I continue to advocate for a well-equipped policy institution that is the PIA, who is going to be able to, the leadership in that policy institution, which is the Ministry of Petroleum or the Minister of Petroleum, must be able to bring the authority and the commission together when issues like this arises. And now people don't understand that actually the authority is supposed to determine the quantity of crude that is required for domestic refineries. And they are supposed to make it available to the commission to be able to look at what the domestic crude supply obligations should be. And it's the commission that will determine which refinery to receive this domestic crude. The thing that we are not looking at is Dangote Refinery really a domestic refinery? Because it is located on a free trade zone with certain obligations and certain requirements. And it cannot begin to operate outside that particular modular operandi for a refinery that is located on a free trade zone. So these are issues. But the government has a way to be able to incentivize him, and that's why it's really good that NNPC has 20% stake in that equity, I mean, that refinery complex, which means they can take the entire 20% and dedicate it for the domestic market.
The PIA, taking us a bit back to the PIA, I think many are seeing it like majorly it's focusing so much on pricing. What more do we expect from total deregulation of the downstream? What are the opportunities available moving forward with the full implementation of the PIA 2021, Prof?
Yes, the PIA is an act. It's a combination of a lot of laws. Regulations are supposed to be derived from the PIA. And I will continue to encourage the regulators to be able to separate the provisions of the PIA from the regulations they have to derive from that PIA. If you look at some of the regulations that we have now from the authority and perhaps from the commission, they need to do better diligence and not just cut and paste those provisions. They need to expand on it. The PIA is an aspiration. The PIA is an expectation. And the expectations are well stipulated with respect to the PIA institutions. Let's look at NNPC Limited. The PIA created a framework to have a commercial institutions called Nigerian Petroleum Corporation Limited. Unfortunately, there are still expectations of the government that are being put on the NNPC Limited, which makes it a little bit more difficult to achieve that objective. Now let's come to the Petroleum Authority and the expectation which related to the downstream. The expectation of the PIA is that the Petroleum Authority, as it is called, or this NMD, no, the PIA calls it the Nigerian Petroleum Authority, is supposed to move towards a competitive downstream petroleum market. The law actually does not expect the authority to be dabbling with certain prices. No. But it must be there to move the downstream market towards a competitive framework. What does that mean? It is not going to be easy to have a pure petroleum downstream market. But you can look at a market that moves towards being able to maximize the consumer surplus without diminishing the producer surplus. What does that mean? That means the Petroleum Authority must understand the market structure governing the petroleum downstream in Nigeria. And right now we have two markets, especially in the downstream. We have what I'll call the wholesale market with two major participants. Forgive me if I call it a duopoly. You have NNPC Limited, which is actually a dominant firm with respect to importing petroleum products to Nigeria. And that means the authority must watch its behavior when it comes to setting prices. Now, Dangote is coming in from the free zone to have a major stake at exporting petroleum products to the Nigerian market. I call it exporting because it's a free trade zone. That means the authority must watch the two of them. Now, the authority is trying to ensure competition in the downstream by issuing licenses for other participants. And that means the authority must pay attention to the quality of product that comes in to compete with these two giants. Now, if you come to the retail market, it's also a different ballgame with different determinants of the pricing. And the government also has a stake because they have taxes, they have levies, which they can use really to ameliorate the instability in the pricing for the domestic market. No, this requires competent workforce. Now, when you go to the commission, the PIA has responsibility with respect to the domestic crude supply obligations. And luckily, they are already at the top of the curve because they have a regulation. So everything Dangote Refinery is alleging, yes, they have the right. But where is the beef? Because the processes are there with some of the things they are alleging.
Prof, it's getting more interesting, and I would like to ask you this straight up too, because following the allegation of this manipulation of crude price and all of that, what do the IOC stand to gain if this refinery doesn't come on stream, or if it does come on stream?
No, they have nothing to gain or nothing to lose. You have to understand. You have to understand. What crude oil are you even talking about that you want to sell or you want to allocate? Listen, right now Nigeria is producing less than 2 million barrels per day. If you look at the capacity of Dangote, that's 650,000 barrels per day. If you look at the capacity of NMPC Limited, if all the refineries are on board, it's about 400 to 450,000 barrels per day. If you look at all the other refineries that are coming up, it's less than 100,000. So by the time you add them together, that's about 1.2 million barrels per day of crude that has to be allocated in Nigeria. And then, what proportion of that 1.2 million, when we are producing 1.5 to 1.7, let's look at the crude components in Nigeria that is available for distribution. I can break them into equity oil from JV, profit oil from PSC, and cost oil from PSC. If you add the three of them together, that is the total crude that we have. Now, the cost oil is as a result of 100% recovery limit, which actually belongs to the international oil company. They have to recover the cost they used to develop the oil. Are you going to tell them not to sell that crude at a premium price? Of course not. They've already spent billions. So that allegation to me is not something I'm going to take home for anything. Now let's look at the profit oil. It's not a lot because of the 100% cost recovery limit. And you already have a PIA that dedicated 30% of that profit oil for frontier exploration. We're just talking about oil. Now let's look at equity oil from JV. It's declining. And then you are even mortgaging quite a lot of that equity oil for funding things that perhaps leave much to be desired. So where's the beef? Are you going to be telling IOC not to get the maximum possible from their crude oil? And of course, you go to the Commission's pricing mechanism is willing seller, willing buyer. So you can't force the international oil company to sell it below the international crude price. And of course, don't forget that you are not looking at the current price. You are looking at the future prices and today's prices, and you are risking. You are taking a risk. You are making what they call hedging. So to me, it is better to have conversation. I think what Dangote did, which is entitled to, is public sentiment, because the public is looking for a way to get cheap petroleum product, and they do not understand that petroleum products are economic goods. They are not public goods. There are rivalry in consumption of petroleum, and there is what we call it's rivalry in consumption and non-exclusion. I have two markets competing for my product, international market and domestic market. The domestic buyers can be looking for sentiment left, right, and center. Hey, except I just want to do what I call corporate social responsibility to look good. I would rather optimize the allocation of my market, my goods between two markets to be able to give me the one that will give me the highest value. This particular period, it may be domestic market. Another period, it may be international. And that's why you need the government institutions to understand the working of the market, international, domestic. You can't force it. If you do, you are going to see what is going on. People will just continue to exit and not participate in this market. So you can't command it. It's not a command and control. It's understanding the market fundamentals. Maximization of return on investment drives investors. You can't kill them with regulations that are inefficient, unethical, ineffective, and inequitable to investors. And that's what PIA tried to do. It's just unfortunate you have too many quagmire with respect to its implementation. And at times it could be very painful for some of us who work tirelessly to reform this industry over the last 20 years. And what we have is what I call status quo. We need to wake up and understand the competitive forces that are ongoing. We call it the evolving energy landscape. Technology, public policy, and economics are important drivers.
I think it's a good way to leave it, Prof, because I was looking at the entire outlook of the industry, but if you can do that in 2 minutes, because a lot is expected from this industry one way or the other, even as government tries to diversify. What is your overall outlook for summary as we wrap up this segment of the program?
Oh, listen, Nigeria has 37 billion barrels of reserves, recoverable, producible, and high quality. Nigeria has 207 to 210 trillion cubic feet of gas, and gas is now the transitional fuel. Nigeria has a petroleum industry act that is crafted to make Nigeria a destination of choice for investors. What you need is good governance that is transparent, accountable, and efficient. Your institutions must be operated on the basis of what I call team approach. First among equal. Recognize the talents that you have. The younger professionals with energy to do the right thing. You need to engage them. Again, the solution is what I call the power of love to overcome the love for power and money. Nigeria is too preoccupied on cash flow instead of growing income. If Nigeria is going to be the destination of choice, which we ought to be, the bride that is to be courted, then we need to think more rationally that prosperity without posterity is inconsequential. We need to go back to the drawing table, build our university system, build infrastructure with petroleum money. That is what we did in the 70s, when $1 was nothing but 67 naira. It is because we had competent workforce, and the future is bright for Nigeria. We just need to continue to prepare this bride in a way that good governance is preeminence.
I must thank you so much. It's the first time on the show, Professor Iledare. He is a Professor Emeritus in Petroleum Economics, Emmanuel Ekpoha Foundation, based in Abuja. Thank you so much. We hope to have you again. Join the program. Help us understand issues like this one. Thank you so much, Prof.